The first time I saw the Halloween Gambit, which is knight takes e5 here, I dismissed it right away as rubbish. There's no way this could possibly be good for white. You're just giving up a knight for a pawn. Everybody knows knights are 3 points, pawns are 1 point. It's just bad. Well, it turns out I was a little bit too quick in my judgment. And recently, leading up to Halloween, I've been playing this quite a bit, and the results have been surprising. So in this video, I'm going to explain why there's actually quite a bit of surprise value and a lot of tricks that white has playing the Halloween Gambit. So I'm going to show you what to do and maybe see if I can even convince you to give it a try. Let's go. All right, so Halloween Gambit comes out of the 4 knights, which is basically e4, e5, and then both players just kind of throw out their knights, okay? So knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6. Now, before this move, I want to just talk about one little bonus tip for you here. Normally, when you're playing this opening, bishop c4 is the most common move, okay? This is the Italian game, and usually black will play bishop c5 is one of the most common moves, okay? You would go piano. A lot of players, when you play knight c3, are kind of like, yeah, I always play bishop c5. I'm going to play it here. Like, why not? This is probably going to transpose to something I've seen, and, you know, they just do it. This is actually a bad move. And the reason is because you can play knight takes e5. And what we're doing is after black recaptures, we're going to play d4, forking the pieces. So we're going to get back our piece. And let's say usually black will want to keep the bishop. So bishop d6, takes. And it was an even trade, but the position that we get is just better for white. We can play f4, kick the bishop around. If they take, we're going to take back. We have the bishop pair. We have strong control over the center. And if they move somewhere, then they're going to get kicked around again, or even just a simple move like bishop d2, and white's just way ahead. Computer thinks like white's just won the game already. So, and then the other thing, just to be complete here, they could take on f2, check, and then take your knight. This is totally fine. Also, you're going to play d4, and I mean, look at this awesome center. And the knight's going to have to go back somewhere. And by the way, our king is totally safe. Like, we're going to develop this bishop. And once this rook comes over either to f1 or e1, we can just slide the king back to g1 whenever we need to. And we're just way ahead already, okay? So that's a little trick. Now, you might be wondering, like, why can't you just do that trick normally, right? Like bishop c4, bishop c5, like, why don't more people play this if it's so good? Well, the reason is it doesn't work in this case. And here's why. They take, you play d4 to get the fork, and you have a problem that your bishop is hanging on c4. So black could just take it, and then you're down, you know, you lost 2 pieces and you only got 1 back, right? Because that bishop on c4. And actually a better way for black to do it is even to just throw in the check here, you block, and then take your bishop. So it doesn't work in that case, but when you play knight c3, if they play bishop c5, just know that you're winning, take on e5, and go on to have a nice game, okay? So just remember that little bonus there. All right. But the most common move is knight f6, and now we're in what's called the 4 knights game. And this is the starting point for the Halloween Gambit, where you capture on e5 with your knight. And, you know, when you're first learning chess, one of the first things that you learn is pawns are worth 1 point, knights are worth 3 points. And so don't give up a knight for a pawn, because you're losing 2 points immediately, right? So why are we doing this? Well, and actually before I show you this, I have the opening database up over here. I want you to look at all of white's possible moves in this position, okay? And what do you notice about knight takes e5? You can see it down there. I'll highlight it for you there. What do you notice about knight takes e5 in relation to all those other ones? Well, if you said that it has the highest win percentage for white, you would be correct. So surprisingly, this move, you know, white does better. I have it set to the entire lead chess database, but even if we switch it to masters, here, I'll switch it over to masters. Let's check the win percentages here. Okay, 35, 37%. Check that out. Even in the master games, 38%. Now it's only 13 games, so it's okay. Maybe it's not the greatest sample size, but the fact that it has the highest win percentage is saying something. So we give up our knight. What do we get in return? Well, we're going to play the move d4. And we're attacking the knight, and black really has 3 options here. They can go back to c6, they can go back to g6, or they can just give back the piece by playing something like bishop b4 if they wanted. And by the way, while we're talking about this giving back the piece, they can really do that at any point. So for example, they could go back to c6, and then we can attack it, and then they could give us back the piece by playing bishop b4 and let us take it here. Or they could, you know, do it at some other point. There's lots of moments when they could do that. But here's the thing, like if they decide to give you back the piece, like let's say here, takes, at this point, you're kind of just playing chess. By the way, if you're wondering, queen g4 is a really good move for white. And and it gets a little bit tricky, but the basic idea is that like if the knight captures here, you can just take the bishop and white's just winning. So it's really good for white if they do it this way. There's a little bit other there's maybe some more clever times that they could give back the piece, but just know if they do that, you're just going to be playing chess, and it's going to be relatively equal. Maybe black gets a little counterplay, but whatever. It's not that bad. Okay, so what I'm going to be focusing on in this video is when they don't give back the piece, they actually try to be greedy, because most players are greedy, and they hold on to the knight. Okay, so that kind of there's two ways: knight c6 and knight g6. So let's talk about knight c6 first. On knight c6, I think is the worst option for black, because what you're going to do against knight c6 is play d5. And now they don't really want to go back to b8 probably, because then you get this position. And I mean, look at this. Like this, now you're just winning. Even though you sack the piece, you're just winning because you have lead in development, huge center, black is nothing. So the most people will go back here, but then you can play f4. They go back here, play e5. And you get this like huge pawn center, okay? So because of that, the line that I'm gonna focus on in this video is where they just immediately go to g6, because now you can still play e5, but you don't get quite as many pawn moves for free. All right, so after knight g6, we're gonna play e5, and notice how the knight can't go here, because we've got it covered. And we also have our queen covering these squares. And so the only thing the knight can do, unless they want to, like I said, sacrifice it, which they could play bishop b4 and just let you take it. But most people will play knight g8. Okay. And so now this is kind of the critical position where, all right, there's no more knights for us to attack. We're down a piece, but what do we have? Well, we have a lot of space. We've got these two pawns that are nicely advanced, controlling the center. Our bishops have free open diagonals to go wherever they want. And black is behind in development, right? Also, we're going to be able to play 1-2 moves and castle if we want. We can castle in 2 moves. Black, it's going to take more, right? 1, 2, 3 at the earliest, and maybe even longer depending on what black decides to do, right? So that's, you might say, well, that doesn't seem like much, all right? And that's true. But let me show you this move. Queen to f3. And by the way, this is kind of a sneaky little move that not very many people play. Most people play like bishop c4. But there's a reason why I like this queen f3 move. And it has to do with the fact that, well, first of all, we're lining up here. So we could follow up with bishop c4. And this is not so easy to defend, right? Because if knight h6 to defend, we can just capture. And then queen e7 is kind of awkward because it blocks the bishop. So we're kind of setting up for that. And black's best chance here really is to play d5, in my opinion. And to kind of shut down that diagonal, right? Because now if we capture, it's not really great for us. Black can just capture it and do pretty nicely. Their bishops are out, and that's not what we want. So when they play d5, what we have to do is capture with the queen. Takes. And you might say, why do we want to trade queens? Aren't we trying to be aggressive? That's the interesting thing about this gambit. You can actually trade the queens off and go into a middle game or even an end game with your 2 central pawns. And it turns out it's not that easy for black to play this position, even though the computer loves it. The computer says, oh yeah, black's winning with perfect play. But like, we're not playing computers, we're playing people. So, all right, we got this threat, king d8. Okay, so we get this position. And I've been playing this, and like, I get to this position, and I actually have noticed that, the pawns are really annoying. The pawns are really strong. Now, if you start losing pawns or something, then you're going to be in trouble. But if you're smart about what you do, you kind of just defend your pawns. The extra knight for 2 pawns is not that good, especially if you make it to an endgame and everything gets traded. A lot of times 2 pawns against a knight in an endgame can hold their own pretty well. So that's kind of the interesting thing about this gambit. Now let me just go back and show you a couple of things here. The most common move played actually is not d5, it's d6. And d6 is not as good. Now we can play bishop c4. And remember that threat that I was talking about. So now most people actually play bishop e6 to try to stop it. And now we have a cool little move. We can take on b7. And check this out. If they take our bishop, we've got queen c6 check, and we're actually winning the game now. I mean, I say winning, we're ahead. We're not like completely, it's not mate or anything, but we're ahead. So king e7, if queen d7, well then they lose the rook. So king e7, we take on c4. And now black's king does not look very good, right? We're going to castle. We're going to bring a rook over. We got the bishop here. I'm sorry, the bishop here. We've got the knight. I mean, our queen's in a good space. Like, this is very, very difficult for black to play. Okay, so that's one thing that happens a lot. The other thing, instead of d6, some people will play bishop to b4. And again, we can play bishop c4, lining up here, and most people will play queen to e7 to try to defend. Now we can just castle, and then usually black will go ahead and trade this off, and we get this position, usually knight h6, and, you know, you're kind of just playing chess, but you have, again, a lot of space. You've got these annoying central pawns. If you want, you can trade this off and mess up black's pawn structure further. I like to try a4 a lot of times when I play this. It seems to be pretty tricky getting the bishop on that diagonal for white. And then you can kind of bring this rook over. You can move your queen somewhere and start trying to push f4, f5. It's surprisingly playable. Like, you know, I thought when I was testing this out that I was just going to feel like I was completely lost every game I played. Did not have that experience at all. I actually felt like I have chances to win these games. And so that's kind of the basics of what's going on with the Halloween Gambit. I want to show you a game that I played just recently to kind of finish this video off and see how it worked out in practice. All right, so here's a game I played recently. Now, this was a blitz game, but it was against a 2200 player, and we played Halloween Gambit. Okay, I played d4. They went to g6, e5, knight g8, queen f3, and like I showed you, d5. Okay, and so I took it. And king d8, here we go. This is like exactly what I showed. And then I tried h4 to see if I could harass the knight. c6, knight here. The knight went back. c4. And notice how I'm using these extra pawns that I have. I'm like, well, you know, the one thing that I got in exchange for my piece was a bunch of extra central pawns. So I'm going to do my best to use them. So he threw in the check to try to trade some pieces. And okay, g4, right? I mean, I have a lot of pawns, you know, and I'm just kind of like, all right, let's go. Let's just go. And we get this position, and it's kind of like, you know, how does black make progress? I mean, yeah, they're up a piece, but look at my pawns. I mean, this is like not that easy for black to figure out what to do. So they played a6, I played a4, okay, b6, takes, bishop f3. I mean, at this point, I'm kind of just like waiting to see what black's going to do. And here black finally tries to make a breakthrough. And let's see. Yeah, I had a little inaccuracy here, but I tried this tactic and black actually misplayed it. So my idea here is that after something recaptures, I'm going to be able to fork and win my piece back. And it actually worked out in my favor that they took with the king, which is the wrong way, by the way, because now I have this little trick. And interesting thing is it's double check. And if the king takes the pawn, well, then I'm just winning. I skewer the rook. So that was a misplay on black's part. Now we were getting a little bit lower on time, but so they have to move the king over at this point. Otherwise that happens. And now, I mean, it's pretty equal, but this is tough for black to play. I think these pawns are really strong, right? And you're going to see how 2 pawns against a knight can do just fine. And then black actually makes a mistake here. The rook comes down, and then now we're going to have 2 connected pawns. And let's see, where's the big mistake at? I think, yeah, black just decided to sacrifice the knight there. But, I mean, these pawns are rolling. Computer says it's equal with perfect play, but practically this is great. We were both getting really low on time, and so we had this, and, you know, I ended up winning with the end game. But the point that I want to show you is even going into an end game down a piece, I was like able to play a normal game. I mean, I didn't feel like I was so far behind, right? Like going back to, you know, this position right here, it's like those central pawns are legit, you know? So anyway, I've had, you know, several games actually like this where I've won just from going into an endgame like this. So I hope that this maybe encourages you to give the Halloween Gambit a try, and let me know how it turns out for you, or if you're too scared to play it. I understand, Halloween, so makes sense. But no, hope you guys learned something, and stay sharp, play smart, take care.